with me to Exodus 17, begin at verse 8 and reading through verse 15. Exodus chapter 17, begin verse 8, reading through 15. What's a banner? How would you define a banner? Well, it's a flag, yeah. But what do we do, as far as, when we see a banner, we often follow or we're governed by, as we think about God's name tonight, Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah is God is my banner. Wherever God is, we know his presence, his power, his provision. And as one had described, when they see the flag, a United States flag, for instance, in a foreign country, we know it's freedom because of what the flag represents. And so as we think about tonight God's name, he's our banner, we find how as God created the world, we know his name Jehovah, Yahweh. We know that he's the one true God, and a name that many Jews would not ever mention. It was so holy. Hey, they would even not mention it. And I told you before, Yahweh in the Hebrew doesn't have vowels. It's YHWH. And so we find, as we look at Exodus tonight, the children of Israel have been freed from their deliverance, from slavery, and they were on the way to the promised land. They were in the wilderness. And we see how the enemy approached, but how God, delivered them. And he will deliver us from our enemy as we go under his banner, knowing that Jehovah is our banner. And so as we read this evening, begin verse 8, then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put under him. He sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on one side and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said to Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. And says God add rich blessed to reading his word. As we think about the things that are going over Israel right now between the Jews and the Palestinians, this goes way back in scriptures. We know that Amalek was the grandson of Esau. And the relationship between Esau and Jacob. Of course, Jacob's name was changed to Israel when he was wrestling with God, and thus became the father of the nation of Israel. But from that point on, as you read the Word of God, we find tension still, arose, from the rivalry between Esau and Jacob. It went through generation after generation, and even to today. The reason why there's conflict today is because of what happened back in the early days, And so it's not anything new. They've had this all through history. If you looked at history, the Jews and Palestinians always, or Muslims, they never got along because, of the thing that happened. That's why I always tell people, there are consequences to our choices and our decisions in life. And some of them are lifelong, like it was with Amalek and, the children of Israel. And so we find here when they were out in the wilderness getting ready to go to the promised land, Amalek heard of it, and we see an encounter in verse 8. It says, and Amalek fought with Israel at Rephidim. It's just like if you have a grudge or something, somebody, don't matter where or when, you're going to take it out on them. because people are bad to carry grudges, aren't they? Yeah. And so we find in this instant, here these ragtag group of people, and there was probably 1 million or more of them, were going to the promised land, but here's Amalek. He hated them so badly that he heard they was coming and he went to attack them. But then we see in the second place, engagement. In verse 9, Moses said to Joshua, who was his military commander, his second lieutenant or second in charge, told him to choose out men and go out and fight with Amalek, because he knew that those folks weren't military trained soldiers. They were just common people, slaves, had been set free. But through the time, Joshua may have possibly, since he seemingly had knowledge of military, prowess and things, he could have taught some tactics and things. And so we find here that as Moses sees God telling Moses, giving him the game plan. You see, people don't realize that God has a plan. He has a plan. It wasn't Moses' plan, because it said, even though Moses called Joshua, but see, Moses got his word from headquarters, from heaven, And so as we find, as the enemy was approaching, we find him telling Joshua, choose out men, and Joshua would know who would be a fighter or one who could engage with the battle. And so he told him, you go fight with them, and I'm going to stand over there on top of the hill. That sounds like something I would do. I seen you deacons out in the fray. I said, I'm going up here on the hill. But Joshua trusted Moses' leadership, and he obeyed what Moses said. And the reason Moses, you'll see why he went there, because, he was going to be visible to the people, to the men that were fighting. Shouldn't a leader be visible to the ones that are engaging in? I expect that. I think a leader ought to be where a person can see them and everything. And so we find as he went up the hill, but he didn't go without anything. Remember, God had given him, and he has a rod in his hand. And what he used that during the plagues and all. Remember, the first time God told him to throw that rod down, what did it become? A snake. Now, if it had been me, I headed to the hill. But God said, pick him up, But Moses did, and he turned back into a rod. So you see, from the beginning, that rod, was an instrument of God, to be used, by Moses. And, to me, we all have things that ought to symbolize the presence, the power, of God. The Word of God is our rod, as we about overcoming. We'll talk about armor all Sunday, And so, as you see, Moses, he went up with the rod of God in his hand. And so we see that encouragement in the third place. As Joshua, as he obeyed Moses and said to him, and fought with Amalek. And we see Moses, Aaron, and Hur. Now, who were Aaron and Hur? Priests. Yeah, his brother, but also priests. Okay? And so we find, and what's so ironic, he took Aaron and Hur, too. I always tell people you need to go in pairs. I always tell people you don't need to go alone. You need to always go in pairs. That's just correct. And you doesn't say if one falls down, there's no there to help you up. And that's why it's good for a husband and wife. They're two, but they become one, you know. And so as you see Joshua getting ready to fight this battle with Amalek, here goes Moses, Aaron, and Hur up the hill. And as we see them there on the hill, and I like this phrase, you know, it's one of my favorite phrases in the Bible, and it came to pass. That's what we always need to realize, that whatever is happening, it will come to pass. Too many of us, we plan too far ahead or get preoccupied or something. We need to realize it will come to pass. Whatever is happening, it's going to come to pass because God said it would. So many people get bogged down with things, and it discourages them, and they don't realize that, you know, it's going to come to pass. You know, it's not that you may get over, but you get through it, whatever it is. And so we see it came to pass, they could see Moses on the hillside. And the Bible says when Moses held his hand up, what happened? Joshua and the army prevailed over the Amalekites. But what happened when his arms went down? The Amalekites, you know, were victorious. I mean, that's a sermon in itself. Because we need to keep our eyes on God. When God, He's in control. And when He's in control, we'll be victorious. We'll be victorious. But just like as we find here, you know, Moses' hands, you know, got heavy. I mean, how many of us can hold up our hands like this for a long, and he is holding a rod too, you know. I mean, we could hold it up for a while, you know, but after a while, you know, I watch these shows, Survivor and Amazing Race and all that, you know, I'm amazed at what those folks can do, you know. But after a while, even the strongest a person, you know, you get weak. You start trembling. And you know it, you watch them. Those arms will start to shake and everything, and before long, and so Aaron and Hur was there, and they saw that. And they decided they put a rock under and let Moses sit down. Yeah. And they would in turn hold his hands up for him. And because of that, they were able to defeat the army of Amalek. You know, I can see so many leaders, you know, in positions that they can be strong, but in time, you know, they get tired, they get weary, they get worn, and they need us to hold them up. They need encouragement. I mean, there's not a person alive that don't get discouraged. You know, especially, you know, pastors, as I, you know, been one a good long time, and I remember, you know, I could go for a long time, but then there'd be times, you know, I just get tired. You know, we all been there. What are some ways you can encourage people, not just pastors, but you know, each other? What are some ways you can encourage them? That's for you to talk. It's okay. You can talk back. Pray with them. Pray for them. Okay, what else can we do? Stand by them. Stand with them. Okay, what else? Yes, words, a note, and now you could do emails, texts, yeah, even a phone call. And you know, we got the many ways to communicate, but we still don't communicate well. We need to work on that. But you don't know what that means to a person. That's why we have to be praying, and God may lay that person on your heart. And you might wonder, Lord, and you don't really need to know why oftentimes. Say, Lord, I don't know what's going on in so-and-so life, but he must need you. He must need encouragement. He must need, something. And you don't know what that does when you do that. To lift your name up in prayer, to hear your name, taken to the Father. And see, what gave Joshua and them hope was to see their leader up on there. But then he saw his, companions holding him up. That, to me, is call for strength. Not only was Moses rooting for him, of course, he symbolized God, and the rod was what God had given him to use to show his presence, his power, his provision. And so when he saw Moses with his hands up and they lifting him up, that just does something to individual. See, there's power in that, just like in any area, in unity, in faith, you see. That's how the devil can be defeated. It's when we work together, and we help one another. Because all of us go through times in our lives. And the Lord, as you pray, you ask him, is there someone I need to touch base with, or I need to, pray for? Because there's power. There's power. And I know in the world we're living in, if you look around you, you can get depressed if you look around. So we need to look up. We need to look up. And as a result, we see that they're able to defeat the Amalekites with the edge of the sword. And as we find in verse 14, it says, and the Lord said to Moses, write this for a memorial in a book. See, I don't know about you, but when I get cards and stuff, I'm bad to keep them. Because it's when I'm going through maybe a little hump or something, downtime maybe, I can reach in and grab one of them cards, and I don't know what, that just lifts me up. It could be one from a child, because I'm bad to keep stuff. Carol knows that. Even Sunday, the children gave me a shirt. I started to wear it today. Didn't know it'd be cooling that woman up. But anyway, I'll wear it one so they can see it too. But inside, they had their name and their handprint, And I don't know, it just lifts you up when, even children. And I know it was their teachers that helped them with that. But, that's what we got to do. We got to teach our children to appreciate, and to, encourage, each other. And so Moses wanted him to write in a book, and it said that tell it to Joshua as he was passing on. And that's what our lives are about, is passing on what God has done for us. Yeah. You don't realize how much that means to people. For you to pass on something that had happened in your life, how God brought you through it. He did. Because most people, the devil likes to get them alone and think nobody knows how you feel. Nobody's ever been. Yes, we have. There's not anything you've been through that somebody else has not. And they may be even going through it right now. I don't know how everyone feels. We don't grieve alike. We might have all lost someone close to us, and we all grieve differently, but yet we grieve. And how we can help one another, to hold each other up, to listen, That's a big thing. I think the world needs more listeners. They do. And not be ready to make a quick, I know what you should do. Boy, you got people by the dozen that can do that. I mean, I just love someone who will just sit down with you and just maybe even be quiet. I always try to tell deacons, you don't always have to know what to say. Just be there. Because as I tell people going through, a funeral line and all, it's good to have the book, what they sign in, because many times you don't remember everyone. Now, maybe you'll remember some because they've been through what you've been through. But a lot of them, you go back and look at that book. They were there. Yeah, they were there. So that's why it's good to have a book, and everything. So see, Joshua, Moses, he was passing down to Joshua what God done and God does, in a life that's committed to him, so that he in turn can carry it on. See, that's what each generation we need to do. We need to, what experiences and what things God has done and doing, we need to tell that to our children, to our grandchildren, or to, someone. And so that they can know that God is the same God. He's the same God as with Esau and Jacob and the 12 children of Israel and on down. That's why, Jewish people, even though they've never accepted Christ, but they still believe in the one true God. The one true God. And that's why no one's been able to defeat them, because they go on that premise. They tried to defeat them. Remember 1947? They were under, I forget which group there, but they fought and they didn't think they'd have a chance, but they won their independence. So that's before I was born, so that's why. I mean, I should remember that knowing history, but anybody remember who had Israel before they became a state? Maybe I need to go back, and I should have looked that up. I could have Googled it. Somebody Google it and let me know, okay? They always tell me Google can tell you everything, but I don't think it can. It's bad when they say, see this. I always hate when I go and they say, see this. See this? That ain't what I want to know. And not only they wanted to remember, what God had done. Moses built an altar. Altar was a place that symbolized, worship to God. And he called it Jehovah Nissi. Lord is my banner. See, that's the banner that we need to follow. Because we talk about the cross. Yeah, we talk about the cross. It's our banner. That's why I like the hymns when they stand up for Jesus. We need to do that. We got enough Christians in the United States, if they would stand up for Jesus, it'd put a stop to all this. I believe that with all my heart. I don't know why you can't convince kids, hard heads, or folks that know all. Just give me Jesus. Just give me Jesus. Now our banner should be Jesus. Jesus. Anybody got anything you want to add?
I think it's Britain.
Huh? Britain? I wasn't sure. Okay, I didn't realize Britain. Well, I knew Rome, had them for a number of years, even after Christ to a certain time. And anyone, let's say Britain. I didn't realize.
And what become known
Oh, okay. So they just acquired it, and it was like a state or something.
In the years following the
Okay.
end of World War II,
Okay.
became an independent state.
47 years. So really, like, if you think back all the years of the bondage and everything, it may have switched, like, as you said, to a territory, so. But they wanted their independence just like America did, when we, broke away from England, So thank you. I appreciate it. I should have looked that up. I should have Googled it, but I left Google alone. Because I don't know. It could be. It's probably true, but I don't believe everything Google says. Excuse me, I shouldn't say that on Facebook, but I know it. Okay, anybody else got a comment or anything? I mean, it's important as we see God at work, how he wants to use us to defeat, the enemy. And the enemy's got an awful hold on this nation and this world. We need to stand up, for Jesus. And we'll look at armor all Sunday, okay, as we come together. All right, let's break up into our prayer cell, and then you dismiss. Thank you for being here tonight.